I'm sure by now you've heard the body keeps the score, in that trauma and emotions can be stored within our bodies. But today we have Kimo Kepano, the light seer, to give us another perspective on energy and frequency of trauma in the body. We also dabble in the spiritual realm of negative energies or spirits and the difference between gut feelings, instincts, and intuition. It was such a fun one. Also this week, we are launching our web version of all the How We Get Thru courses on our website. And to celebrate, all the courses will be 15% off this week, March 24th through March 31st. So if you've been eyeing a course or if the universe has been nudging you to dive deeper into your own work, check out all the courses at howwegetthru.com. And through is spelled THRU. If you are new here and you are listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. And my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff, all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. We have my newest bestie on.
We are so besties now.
We're such besties. You guys, what an honor. We have Kimo Kepano, the light seer. If you don't know him, you might be under a rock. I don't know. Like, you are on TikTok, you're on YouTube, you are on Instagram, you are everywhere. And that's how we got connected. I came to you for a session, and I think I told you this when we met, but I really wanted to dive deeper with you because I appreciate your grounded approach to spirituality, and grounded and expanded, I think are the two words.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you. And so I'm so excited to have you on to keep that going. And I know you get a lot of hate, and I was like, oh, no, we're not doing that. But again, just sometimes I feel like we get called to uplift the people that are uplifting other people.
Yeah.
And that is you. And so thank you for all your work.
I really appreciate that. I mean, for all the users at home who are listening, within 5 minutes of meeting you, I thought I think we're going to be besties.
Yes, we're going to be besties. Yes. We can get deep and then be real silly and what the fuck?
Be besties. I really appreciate that. Let me just do a really brief introduction of what the heck I do.
Yeah.
For all the individuals who don't know me. I'm so glad that we found each other on social media. And the irony is that I can't stand social media. It drives me insane. However, the community got to know me because of my platform, and I expressed what I know on social media. So again, my name is Kimo. I am from the Hawaiian Islands, so big aloha kako to all of your listeners. In the Hawaiian Islands, I am known as a high seer, but I have taken on the name of the light seer. But let me explain what a high seer is. I was a very young child creative medium, right? I was seeing spirit at a very, very young age and doing genealogy by the time I was 4 years old, being able to find all this wacky, wild information that genealogists were having a hard time finding. And as I continued to grow, I learned that my abilities were seeing much more than just spirit energy. And I didn't even really want to see spirit energy when I was a kid, but it just never really turned itself off. It usually happens for children at a very young age until around 7.5, but mine never turned off around that age. They maintained. And then from there, I started to see all these visualizations of how color manifests as trauma, and then how trauma can manifest inside of the body as chronic stuff. And when I got older, by the time I was in high school, I was doing more medical stuff on my teachers. And then I kind of I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to do I know, on my teachers.
Yeah.
I don't want to do any of that because I just need to be a normal kid.
Yeah.
But I did start to teach at a very young age. I was teaching workshops by the time I was 16. And the high seer, which is different than a seer is someone who activates their ability to see in trajectory, which we should talk about that with you later. But for me, it's the ability to see things through frequency. And I didn't realize that I was seeing frequency until I was a little bit older, meaning that there is frequency around the human biofield. There is frequency on that beautiful plant behind you. There is frequency in communication. There's frequency in the body. And when you learn how to really identify what each frequency does, then that's how you begin to reshape problems that are inside of the body in terms of medical issues. Because it's just a series of rewiring frequencies that you see. And from that realm is when I became a high seer, is really being able to expand all the different versions of sight beyond mediumship and psychic abilities and intuitive abilities. So when you explain that my approach is a grounded approach, I am a firm believer that everyone can do what I do. I really do. I know that my abilities were just very natural, but I don't believe that any of that should be special. All of it should be shared. So what we do is we take a look at how every single individual works with their own frequency. And then we excavate, we add, we do exercises, so that way we get you to be the highest, most elevated version of what we know you can be in terms of frequency. So you can do a variation of what I do. That's the goal. That's
yes. And again, there's like not a holier than thou vibe. There
should never be
an intro into your own self and your unique self. And again, that's what I appreciate about what you're doing and what you're saying and how you say it. And also, I mean, I believe that I can like tap into my abilities for sure, but like, what's it like being you? Like, what is how do you turn that off? Like, what is the best parts about it and what are the worst parts about this for you?
Yeah, well, so the best parts of that is what you see of me now. It's the choice that I have made to then become a light seer. And that language was because when I was a child, the majority of what I saw was everyone's trauma. You know, I'd walk down the street as a little kid and my mother would elbow me because I would just say what's going on for that person, what's going on for that person. And that person has got arthritis and that person is having problems on her back and that person has stenosis. All these things, and you know, and my family kept on saying Kimo, Niele, which is like it's too nosy. It's too nosy. But so that was like not the best version of me. So what I learned is that by tuning into frequency, you can identify, but what can you do with that dense energy, including things that feel like it's like scary spirit, or things that feel like I was taught demon as a kid. Bless you. So what can we do when we push that frequency and expand that frequency? Then everything actually turns into light. So my variation of what I call you got that little chilies.
I love that. Yes.
So my expansion and variation of what I call lights here is my choice to see everything in light. Because I didn't see everything in light as a child. I was a very noir clairvoyant. Everything was very dark. The very first spirit that I saw would not stop crying. Always crying. My parents were like, what are you talking about? What are you seeing?
Is this Paulina? I did a deep dive on you.
Yeah, Pauline Angel is what I called her. And when I described her, you know, being able to validate her first and her last name and describe how she passed and where she passed and what was going on for her, and that in fact it was a suicide, my parents knew that, well, he doesn't know what that means. How would he know that? We don't watch those kinds of things. You know, the only thing I was watching as a kid at that age was the Dukes of Hazzard. I wasn't watching anything else. I was a kid. Right? So then from there, learning how to see what is past the darkness. And I really do believe that there are so many mediums out there who are well-intentioned, but they only see noir. They only see the demon. They only see the darkness. And so then their human brain kicks in to say, well, that must mean that spirit is trapped. That must mean that soul is stuck. But that's not what frequency shows, though. Frequency doesn't show them like that. Frequency shows that you only see an aspect of that, and you just haven't learned. And many mediums, unfortunately, especially this wonderful new generation, you know, there's still a lot of lack of development going on there.
Yeah.
Because they stop at a place of seeing demon. They stop at the place of seeing things that feel like they are stuck. But there's so much more expansion beyond that. And if you are a medium out there, or a psychic, or someone who is working on your intuition, if you have stopped at that place, then what that tells me is that you've reached the summit of your knowledge. And there should be no summits. There should be peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys and no summits. We just continue to move.
Yeah, I love that. And again, the way that I've been introduced to the spiritual world is through TikTok, really.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people just want to get the likes, and a lot of people just want to get the numbers. And
that's how it's
what
done.
what I also liked about you is how you debunked or validated the ghost TikToks. Like, is there a spirit in this room? Like, let's see, you know?
Right.
And again, and that idea of like, demonic, like, is that real or is that not? And that for me was like, oh my gosh, because sometimes I get scared there's a spirit in my house, and then I was like, fuck it. Like, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? What are they going to do? Come on in. Should we want to talk about something? Like, there's nothing against me.
Yeah.
Is what that felt like that freedom, or that I didn't need protection. I don't know if that's right or not, though.
No,
like,
I think you're doing great. I think
like, that's fear.
It is fear. And fear is a muscle. So then the thing that we say is, how much are you going to work it out? Because fear is a trained response. When we are born, we are only born with two natural fears, the fear of falling and the fear of sound. Those are the only natural fears. You know, a baby doesn't want to feel like it's being dropped, and a baby gets frightened by large noises, right? But everything else is not natural. The only natural part of fear besides falling and the fear of sound is the brain saying, well, I don't want to be afraid, so I need to move away from fear. You know, this tunes into what we call our sympathetic nervous system. I need to have more adrenaline so I can run from the tiger. So when we sense that a spirit energy is in the room, your sympathetic nervous system says that must be bad. Therefore, there's an evil in the room. Therefore, there is a demon in the room. Therefore, this house is haunted.
And I can't get away.
And I can't get away. So our brains are doing a natural chemical response, but that response is, yes, it is natural, but it's also something that you're working out. How often are you doing that? So we have to retrain the brain to identify what is the difference. And that's the hard part of frequency work, because you have to allow yourself, be excited about the things that you are going to be learning about, which means that if you find something in your home that feels scary, well, then get to know it. Don't run away from it. Get to know it, but also give it a very specific filter. If you could see what it looks like for me, the amount of times that spirit energy is close and someone hears their name and freaks out, or someone feels touched on their shoulder and freaks out, for me, it's like your grandmother is trying to talk to you, you know, but you're freaked out because you have this synaptic response to fear. But if you really could understand how much spirit energy is conspiring with you at all times. So it's identifying, how do I get myself to the frequency of being able to understand what that intention is? I hear my name being called, right? And well, who's calling my name? Is it my grandmother? What is she trying to say? Is it a warning? Is it a congratulations? What is it? What's happening? And that's the executive process. And that right there is an academic response. So either we do a fear response, which we can, you know, exercise and make more predominant, or we can do an academic response. And the choice is up to you. And the money is in the fear response, unfortunately. This is why we have paranormal investigations. This is why we have priests who do, priests who do clearings. But it's not just priests. We have, you know, curandera and brujo and huna who do clearings because they themselves may not know. I speak from an Aboriginal perspective. I was Aboriginally trained in the Hawaiian Islands. I did do a lot of academic training beyond that as an educator, but still, I understand that base, and it comes from every single perspective. It's not just from Christian and Catholicism and the Pentecostal churches. It comes from all walks of spirituality. And our job is to move past that.
So the idea of like black magic or somebody dealing in the dark arts, is that, what do you think about that?
Well, so that works if there is a belief system behind that. If someone were to say, I'm going to curse you, well, that means nothing for me. Right? It's like that line of Wizard of Oz. You know, you have no powers here, witch, poof, be gone, right? So
that's right.
It only works if I have belief system. If someone puts a curse on me, and if I believe that it will be a manifestation, then I've just been a co-creator in that manifesting. Ooh. So black magic is real for the respondent person if there is a belief system. And sometimes you say, well, that's not going to happen, but a little bit of fear sets in, and then all of a sudden you walk into a room and like a glass has fallen, or oh my gosh, was it real? You know, so all of a sudden, what do? You lean into the chemical response of fear. So then it teaches your body that maybe that is real. So then all of a sudden you are submissive. So for example, even though on a frequency level, there is no such thing as demon. However, on a emotional level, demon is very real.
Yeah.
Right? On the level of, but I had a bad experience. Well, experiential stuff connects to your emotions, which means that it's very real for you. But it's not real when it comes to frequency. When you look at demon, for example, Demon shows up as an amalgam of your trauma, unprocessed, your triggers, unprocessed, your
Wow.
depression, unprocessed, your brain reading a lot of horror, energy submission, being told something in dogma that it must be real. So it works with all of that. So the manifestation of that energy becomes quite experiential for you, but it's not real in terms of frequency. When you unwind all of that, literally down to its core, then you could understand, wow, I was complicit in that. And the easiest thing to do is to say, that person is possessed. That person has a demon attached to them. That takes away all autonomy. That says, well, then there's no responsibility. I have no reason. I don't have to be responsible for it. So because I'm not responsible for it, that can't possibly be me. I can't even tell you how many times I've been asked to look at a case that is some kind of possession, and that person is experiencing profound paranoia, or that person is experiencing psychosis, parapsychosis, schizophrenia, undiagnosed bipolarity 1, personality disorder, and more. And to me, I say, well, you went to the wrong person. This person needs help.
Yeah.
And it's a cry for help. And you just scared the hell out of them by telling them that what is going on for them is something that they don't have any control over.
Right.
Which is so messed up.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as you said that, I was like, oh, that feels really empowering to me. Like,
exactly.
I had the opposite response of like, I am in control. I am empowered to move through this earth the way I want to and without fear. And what would that be like? What kind of life would that be like?
What would that be like? No, we don't want to negate that chemical imbalances in the brain are real, because they are very real.
Correct. Yes.
If you ever had a conversation with someone on the opposite end of psychosis, they will describe it in a variety of ways. I did not know what was real and what was not real. My body was always in pain. I had shooting feelings going through my back that made my body contort. I had a strong aversion to things that were deep down in my shadow. So, for example, the exorcism of Emily Rose, which became a very big Hollywood film. That was not her actual real name. But when you take a look at what happened to her, she had a strong aversion to any kind of symbol with religion. When you do the examination, her body passed of dehydration. She was having seizures at the time because they stopped feeding her, because they didn't want to feed the demon, right? This was a person whose brain chemistry was a little off, who needed assistance. So what did we do? We went to the people that feel like they have more information. So it's going to lean us into God, right? And I love God information when there's no gatekeeping or semantics of only one true church, because that's all human coding. But when you go to those individuals who say, but now she has to be exorcised, I get so frustrated with that. Say, no, this is a child that needs profound help. And you are now draining her of all kinds of assistance that she actually needs. And that is a hard conversation to have. I have practitioners who will fight me tooth and nail, which is why I get a lot of hate mail. Because when I express what frequency looks like that is very unbiased, you will have all the individuals come out to say, but you just challenged my dogmatic belief. How dare you?
Yes.
Therefore, you must be leading all other individuals to hell. And I explain, well, that's also another frequency that doesn't exist.
Right.
Oh my God. Everything gets really, really blown out of proportion. My whole entire point is to say that when we learn how to not be submissive to our experiences and to our emotional thoughts, then sovereignty and autonomy becomes so paramount that you break through those things.
I was thinking, I saw another medium and she told me about a past life that I had, which feels true for me. But I kind of created this center for postpartum women. And she's like, I see you like with a judge and you're like, these women aren't crazy. Like, and you were just crying. And so when you talk about, and I can get teary now about that, like when you talk about the needs of people and how we dismiss that because of our own belief or because of our own bias or because of our own view, we mistreat people so poorly, so poorly. And it just feels like, like it hits a chord. And I remember even seeing movies of like people in the nut house or whatever. I'm like, but what if that experience is real for them, right? What are we doing?
I know.
Like, it's scary. It scares me. Like, it's just like, ugh.
And with those experiences, whether that is bipolarity, high manic episodes, or schizophrenia or personality disorder, it is real for them.
Yes.
in those moments when you are in a dropped expression, right? That is very real for them. So our job as practitioners is to help guide them through the appropriate chemicals to introduce into the brain, the appropriate changes to help them to become more autonomous and clear. And that process is not easy. It is, I can't even lie, it is not an easy process because you have to work with brain chemistry. And then, or you have to break apart things that were addictive, like paraphernalia, because that will also induce, if that person is naturally a person who is experiencing psychosis without realizing it, all those things spiral the brain.
How do you, when you say frequency, like what are you seeing? Are you seeing colors? Are you seeing, like, what does that look like for you?
So there's a difference, a slight difference between frequency and energy. In essence, we think of energy as motions of frequency in a contained space. So there's energy in my body, but frequency is outside of my body.
Okay.
Right? Because it is in an uncontained space. And when you look at that, when I was a kid, and I still talk about it sometimes, but I used to call it a highway of dimensions, because visually, and I'm not always tuned in, and in fact, most of the day I choose to tune out.
Good for you.
It's very overwhelming. It's very overwhelming, right? But as a kid, when I was tuned in, if I look at the world, it looked always like, you know how if you go to the gas station and you fill up with gas and maybe it was raining outside, there's like little pools of water that have gasoline droplets on it. And it looks like that ombre rainbow effect on top of it.
Yep.
Imagine saturating that by 1,000% and putting it over everything. Meaning that moves over your building, it moves over your emotions. When you get angry, it pools and it shifts. It means that it moves over your food. It means that it moves over everything. And it looks like they all converge in different places. And I found that where there's large convergences will tell me what kind of emotions that person is experiencing without opening their mouth, because the convergence looks like something. So then I learned that it was just frequency shifts. And when you learn how to read frequency, people joke around that I can see inside of the human body. I don't think I can see inside of the human body, but I can see inside of the human body.
Yes.
It's so tricky. You and I did
in a different way.
In a different way. And technically what I'm looking at, you and I talked about your body in the past, but when I get to know that, I just pay very close attention to how the frequency shifted in the body, which will tell me with pinpoint accuracy, not always, I try to be pinpoint accuracy, which vertebrae, which ligament, which part of the tendon, because it just changes the frequency. And if I'm really, really tuned in, it will show you an outline of where things could be cancerous or tumorous, because the cells look different in that part of the body.
Can you cure cancer?
I have not found that I can cure cancer, because cancer is self-induced.
Ooh, tell me more.
When you take a look at my results of being able to heal, I do not like that word. In high school, I veered away from that because I didn't like being called a healer. I call myself a facilitator of healing, because I learned when I was doing my teachers in high school that if I were to do a healing, it'd come back in 3 days or in a week. And I didn't like that. I was so frustrated with that. My results could not last. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that you cannot heal anything if that person does not have a desire to be in constant change. Because the emotions will stagnate, which cause inflammation, which cause larger problems in the body. And if you don't handle the emotion, then the healing will never last. You'll have very tepid results. Very, very, very tepid. Which means when you look at things in the body, and I do, depends, I do 5 clients a day. And out of those clients, if someone has a healing, my results are very, very high. If they believe that they are ready to create a change in the body, which might mean I'm experiencing some kind of degeneration in my macular, my sight, which you can change. We found that you can change that. I have major bone stenosis. We found that we can change that. I have chronic migraines. The doctor's having all these different medications. Nothing has helped. We can change that. Why do I say that? But with confidence, because it has changed. It has changed within a matter of minutes. It has changed within a matter of hours. It just depends on the client. But the difference is your belief system. And it's different than saying, I want to feel different. Well, want is not belief. The difference is, I want this to be different. I've had pain for 20 years. Okay. Well, do you believe that you are ready to be outside of pain? I do. I believe that. Well, then we can do a change. If you say, well, I don't understand how things could change after 20 years, that doesn't make any sense. Well, then she won't change.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So there's a belief system, which means that when you look at a facilitation of healing, the things that are a little more challenging to work through is major trauma to the body. Car crash, something environmental has happened to you. We can alleviate the pain. At least not at this point in my life, I haven't found that I can reset a bone. I've heard that can happen energetically. I haven't.
Well, we're going to be open to that,
right? Well, I haven't had any clients with those problems. If that happened, maybe I would experiment and we'll see what could happen. When it comes to cancer, I have found that cancer is self-induced. If it's not an environmental cancer, like I was exposed to these amounts of toxins, right?
Got it.
Besides that, it's environmentally induced. It's emotionally induced.
Like they have lung cancer, but they've never smoked in their lives. Like that's emotionally induced?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it depends. So what I would do, if someone had lung cancer, but they were not a smoker, I haven't had that happen to me, but if that happened, we'll use that as an example. What I would do is I would pinpoint but which lung and which part of that lung and what's going on. And sometimes when you push into the energy, it'll show you a visualization of how old they were, where they were when the emotion started to happen. Now, that doesn't happen for me all the time. I try to get there. But if I can get there, then we go back to the threading of when it began. And if I can get that threading, that's when the client should be able to say, I have never told a living soul that. How did you know that?
Yeah.
Because it takes you back to the thread. Why? Because the body speaks. The body literally speaks. And it is unprocessed. Now, there are many times, this is going to get a little complicated, but my child, though, like she's so young. How does she have cancer? And this is where it gets harder, because in that moment, it may not be about the child, about the parent, right? And that's hard to hear, especially with our young children, because we would never, ever want them to be sick. And if you're a really small child going through some major, major illnesses, you think, well, there's nowhere in her emotions that would induce that. So we have to look at the circumstances of the environment. And in the end, if we are ever interacting and we're not at a place of being able to hear that kind of stuff, I would never interject that kind of information if you weren't at a place of being able to hear it, because it'll feel too heavy. So what I do is we then focus on, let's alleviate some of the pain that she's feeling right now. Let's alleviate some of the sickness in her stomach that she's feeling right now from this therapy that she's getting. Let's help her out with that. I only interject the big existential thoughts if that person opens the doorway to that. Otherwise, it's not going to stick. Yeah.
Have you experienced pain in your own body and being able to process? Like, there's a lot of external things that I've heard you experience. They're just like seeing other things. What is it like to see your body? How are you connecting with your emotions? How does that feel harder? Does that like that? I don't know.
In general, and this is not just from my perspective, it is very hard to heal the self. It is very hard to heal the own body. It's not impossible. You can absolutely do it, but it is harder because you have bias. You have bias in your shadow. Shadow translates into unprocessed traumas and triggers. You have bias in that. And because you have bias in it, you have to do a large amount of excavated work to remove the ego, to move into discernment, and to remove your bias, your prejudices. And that's why it's harder, because we have that. Everyone has that. It's easier for you to give advice to your friend. It's harder to take that advice on your own.
Right. I mean, I'm the therapist, right? I'm like, and then, but to look at myself is like, oh, yikes.
Yeah, because there's bias in there. So that's why it becomes harder for us.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. You might hear that I'm a little bit sick, right? I've been working through something. Well, this morning, I woke up and I was coughing really, really hard. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to cancel my day because I don't want that to be a waste. But I know that I cannot get clear information if someone asks me to help facilitate a healing if I myself am sick, because I will be distracted by the own prejudice of my own body being sick. So, but I wanted to do my sessions today, and I wanted to be able to provide motion and movement. So what I did is I got in touch with my very first client of the day, and I said, I'm going to be rescheduling you as soon as possible, but I need to take the morning off. I have to do some work. And luckily, that client was like, no problem. So we rescheduled her, and I spent that hour slot working on my own body, doing things that normally with a client take me about 20 minutes, but it took me about an hour to do on my own. And by the time I was done, I was able to sit up. I feel there's no brain fog. I feel amazing. I just sound like trash.
Yeah.
But
You
at least
sound
I didn't
great.
look like trash.
Yeah, that's right.
It is harder. So think about it like this.
Yeah.
When we work on other individuals, you as a therapist, you are providing a reflection for them to be able to see a reflection of themselves, meaning that we as a solo entity would never know ever what we look like if there was not a mirror or a shard of glass or brushed copper or still water. You would never know what your reflection looks like, which means you need someone to help reflect to you. It is a part of our human experience. We need the individuals to be able to say, here's what I see. Here's what I can help you with as a therapist or as a friend or as a parent. Right? So reflectors are really, really helpful. It's hard to reflect upon the self if you don't have that.
Yes. Yeah. And where are you currently living? What is your life
Oh my gosh,
like?
where the heck am I?
I
So,
know.
I live I have my apartment in New York City that I've been in since the late 90s. I have my apartment there. But I also know that it's very hard for me to maintain my frequency at a place like New York City. It is not impossible, but I moved to New York City to be an artist, right? That was my conduit to be able to take all the things that I could see and redirect them because I was an overload. So I went to New York City and I was a teacher in pre-collegiate education, working on Broadway at night, doing all the things to create a nice flow. But in the end, it's very hard to sustain that. So when COVID happened and Broadway shut down and all film shut down for a while, and then I decided I think I need to just focus predominantly on just my business. It had opened, but I wasn't really focused predominantly on that.
Right.
So that's when I started my social media. It was during COVID. And now I've learned so much more about myself in the sense that I'm going to keep my New York apartment for now at least, but I don't think that I can sustain that energy in doing what I'm doing in the way that I'm doing it in the volume that I'm doing it in. So I'm currently in the woods.
Yes.
I just put a bid on 22 acres in the middle of the woods on the top of a mountain where I plan to build a sanctuary for people to come and to receive workshops and information, right? So we're building a brick and mortar for Light Seer.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
I love that. Yeah. I just love your story too of the evolution, and it will continue to evolve for you.
It needs to.
Yeah. But that we get to shift. I came here.
We must shift. And I explain this to everybody. There is no finish line with intuition. There should never be. I'm completely aware that my ability would feel very unique to someone else. It just feels like
it does. Yes, it does.
But to me, it just feels like me, right?
Yeah.
And I don't do the whole gatekeeping thing. It's just not me. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to go through limerence with me. Limerence is the ability. Limerence is something I experienced my whole entire life. Limerence is when someone has an infatuation with you because of what you do, right? And I had that my entire life, and it drives me nuts.
And they become addicted to it.
Yeah, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want that. I don't have any need to do that. I don't have any need to be put on a pedestal. I want you to meet me in that zone.
Yeah.
I want you to meet me in the
beautiful.
field of learning. Meet me in the field. And that's learning, right? So because of that's why I speak and communicate the way that I speak. I'm aware that my abilities show a lot of information for neuroscientists, show a lot of information for surgeons, and show a lot of information for doctors. I'm completely aware of that. But yet, there is no gatekeeping. Everyone has access. Everyone has access.
Oh, well, I wanted to talk about intuition a little bit. Because if everyone has access to their intuition, is it unique to everybody? What is intuition? What is it not?
Yeah. So, and this is where it gets very nuanced, and it should be nuanced. This is where it gets very academic. When it comes to intuition, the way that we teach intuition in psychic institutions all over the world is that they are taught as sensory, which is the closest in proximity that we can think of. Well, it must be a heightened sense, and in essence, that is correct. However, my only thing that I teach that is opposite of the institutionalized trainings is that it's far beyond sensory, meaning that we teach it as smell, as taste, as sight, as sound, as knowing, and as gut feelings. That's how it's taught, as senses. But if you look at every single intuition with a frequency goggle, all of those different senses actually has its own pattern. And every single pattern has its own vibration, that has its own sound, it has its own color, which tells you it is not a hodgepodge of one thing that is intuitive. They are all very, very different. So if you take now that same goggle of perspective with frequency, instead of 6 different senses that you teach, there is more than double that in terms of frequency, more than double. And I do hope at some point to see more than what I see. Currently, my ability is C14. I want to see much more. I want to be an excavator to find as many as possible. The reason why I say that is when you're going through healing modalities, my ability with clarity to help change things is to know the difference between what some people might, you and I have talked about this, the difference what someone might think of as a gut feeling versus the enteric nervous system versus a hunch versus instinct, because those are all different, but they all feel like the same thing, but they're not the same thing. So that's how frequency helps us. So that way your accuracy is fast. That's how we have clients that can make changes literally within 5 minutes, because your accuracy must be pinpointed and spot on. And it also depends on the client, like I'm ready.
Yeah. And does that feel like the first step in a lot of your work? It must
be the first step.
The
first step must be way beyond want. It must be belief. In terms of healing, at least.
Yes.
Besides that, if someone just wants to know about their frequency, it's curiosity, and I love curiosity, so then we lean into curiosity. But with healing, it must be a belief system. Otherwise, she won't hit.
That's right.
You're not going to hit.
She gonna stay the same.
She gonna stay the same. But it really is something that we have tested over and over again. So it kind of sounds like the setup of a joke. 2 individuals walk into a bar. Both have stomach issues, right? They both get a facilitated healing. One walks out, awesome. One walks out with no change. What is the difference? The human brain was the difference. And the desire, that's the difference.
And the belief, is that subconscious? Is that something
It is subconscious and it is unconscious. Because our human brains say, well, why would I want to have chronic migraines? I can't think. There is no way that I would ever consciously induce a chronic migraine. Yet the action and the unprocessed trauma would state otherwise. Right? And unprocessed trauma is a visual frequency.
Yeah. So trauma is what keeps us stuck in our limiting beliefs, essentially.
Well, it's one of the
part of it.
We can't blame everything on trauma. It is one of the things. Wouldn't that be nice? It's all his fault.
That's right.
When it comes to trauma, not learning how to recognize the trauma, it becomes the issue. There are many people who say, well, I've just got over that. I'm like, yeah, but that's not processing it. The only thing that happened was time. Time made you forget the details. Time felt like I just don't think about it so much, but that's not processing. Time has nothing to do with process. It must be processed. And then the thing with shadow and trauma is that it's a processing that is lifelong, meaning that if something comes up again, you're like, wow, I thought I processed that. Yeah, but I'm still angry right now whenever I think about that person. Or I'm in an airplane and someone just walked past me that reminded me of my ex, and I know it's not them, but man, my stomach dropped. Well, congratulations. It's not done. Right? So the goal is to be able to recognize clearly and quickly, oh, I know what that is. I've been doing work enough to get to know how to process that. So let me just go back to my exercises again and move that bad boy out right now.
Yeah.
You know, that emotion. I'm going to move that emotion out right now. And that will happen your entire life.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's a really important perspective. And I found myself caught in that multiple times. So earlier this year, I'm like, I thought I cleared that. I thought that was done. And then it came back like full force, 10 times 10 billion.
There's a reason why, though.
Yeah.
Because our brains are so knowledgeable. You know, they're very connected to electric energy, right? Our brains are electric energy. But your body, and especially around the heart center, is magnetic energy. And when you are experiencing something in your brain with your electric energy, your sensory neurites, which are in the heart, those neurites are different, which means that you got 2 brains, baby. You got the brain that says, I'm good, no problem. But that brain is technically saying, I don't want to experience trauma 24 hours out of the day, so I'm going to ignore it and try to go to work and try to function. But your sensory neurites in your heart, which is a completely different muscle, says, but everything for us is experiential. Everything for us must be processed through an experience. So if you bypass that, then we're going to hold on to it for you. And the more you hold on to it without processing it, your sensory neurites are going to send a signal to the body. Oh, she hasn't processed this yet. Give her a bad back. Give her sore knees. Give her, make her slip.
Labor pains when you're not pregnant.
When you're not in labor. Exactly. So then what ends up happening is you say, oh, I'm in alarm. I need to go to the doctor. And you should go to the doctor if you need to go to the doctor. But you go, and the doctor's like, you're fine, dude. What is going on? Well, then you go on some kind of medication to try to alleviate that problem. And your sensory neurites say, okay, now we're going to redirect again, because that's not what we meant. We meant slow down and work through this. And you didn't do it. You bypassed it and you took Tylenol.
Yes, yeah.
So now we're going to do it again, and it'll do it again and again and again until your body learns the new code. Why? Because your body cannot lie. Your body has a veracity for truth. It is impossible for the body to lie. Your mind will lie, your brain will lie, but not your body. So you speak to the body. Exactly. Take your body and speak to the body. Process through the body, not just, I'll be fine. No, you're not.
Is there a spiritual connection in this life? You're going to have this trauma and this is what you need to work through. I mean, is it part of like our purpose? Like, what is your perspective of that? Like,
so that's all contractual, meaning that, we have our idea of, well, what is pre-contracted for us? And there's a lot of truth to that. But every contract is designed to be changed, right? So
autonomy.
I'll use the example right now of, putting a bid on this land. Well, I don't want to pay that much money, so I underbid and I made up my own stipulations. I'm going to pay this much money. Here's how much I want to pay in interest. I'm going to ask you to hold the note. I'm going to ask you to do all this. And he took it. Yay. So essentially what I did is I said, well, this person that I'm buying from the property, his destination was to sell it. My destination was to buy it. But my journey to get there was mine. And that's how contracts work. We have destination points, but the journey through the destination is circuitous. The journey to the destination is totally up to you. And when you find those destination points, please remember that you are allowed to change them. Meaning, let's just say that we're working with someone in hospice and they're at the end of their life. They've been given, 2 more weeks to live. I have found that if that person says, no, I don't, I've got much more, you can make an amendment. You can make an extended warranty.
Wow.
And the doctors are saying, well, we don't know why she's still kicking, but she's still here 5 years later.
Yeah.
Right? Because that person's desire, and we hear about this all the time.
All the time,
created an extended warranty or ripped up the contract completely and says, oh, no, I'm not going to do that contract anymore. I'm going to change it up. I'm going to say, thank you to source energy or God energy, whatever you believe in. Thank you to that energy for that contract. What a wonderful lesson I learned. I really learned a lot. And I'm sending that contract back. It is completed, and I'm looking for a new one now. We have a tendency to call that a new lease on life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It's a very intuitive statement.
Yeah. I think, there's a lot of people out there that will say, you have this or you have that, like a lot of spiritual, whatever. How do we tune into our intuition or discernment or resonance of self when spiritual people tell us, or we invite people into that?
But we really do have to be academic about this, understanding that there is a major difference between your instinct and your enteric nervous system. Your enteric nervous system, which ruminates in the gut system, which is very much connected to how the gut speaks, right? And how those nerves affect the brain. But that's very different than instinct, which is very different than intuition. Instinct is safety mechanisms that are instilled, Something wrong with my daughter? Oh my gosh, I need to go check on her. Well, the instinct led you to the daughter that was doing something, bad
dangerous
for her body. Exactly, dangerous for her body. The instinct took you there, and then we have to ask, well, was that my intuition or your instinct? And in those moments, well, how did you get to the answer of getting heard before something bad happened? And if the answer is yes, I was able to catch her in time, then the answer is it doesn't matter if it was instinct or intuition. Intuition ruminates in heart center energy, not even in brain. It ruminates here in this energy.
Wow.
Right? But instinct ruminates in the gut energy. And it's a safety mechanism. So instinct is a part of intuition, but it is not intuition. It is very similar. It is a parallel sister, but it's not the same.
Instinct, I mean, I'm wondering if it's a little bit more connected to maybe not fear, but maybe
it's
pain.
Survival. It's connected to survivals.
Right. Like, yes, exactly. Where intuition feels like happiness, maybe? Like when it's not necessarily connected to survival. It's more of like...
Intuition connects to an inner knowing, which feels very dichotomous because our brain says, well, is it inner knowing in our brain? And I said, no, inner knowing is inner knowing. This is knowing. Brain is knowing. But inner knowing is not there. So it's one of those, meaning that our brain has all these safety mechanisms. You know, it pushes sympathetic nervous system. It induces your parasympathetic nervous system. It's all these mechanisms that it does in order to keep you thriving and safe and alive. But the heart center energy, that whole entire heart center energy, goes from a profound sense of knowing, and now I understand what needs to happen. It goes instantly into the body. And it could be something that keeps you safe, but it's not always about joy. It's about information. Meaning, true. Intuition is an expansion of multiple things. It's an experience between you and your spiritual team. It's an experience between you and your higher self. It's an experience between you and God, source energy. It's an experience between you and emotional energy, you and environmental energy, you and land energy. It connects to you and animal energy. All of that helps to stimulate new growth, which really translates into your intuition as a formulation of intelligence. New intelligence.
It's so beautiful.
Well, it's wonderful.
Yeah. I love it. I'm like swimming in it. That's what I feel. I'm just like...
Yeah. You should swim, baby. Swim in it. Swim in it. But it should get people excited about it.
Yeah.
Now, where it gets challenging is when your intuition instantly goes right back into the projection.
Yes.
So, for example, that's someone who says, no, I know that there is a demon. I meditated on it, and I saw, and I have literally been told this, I saw something with red eyes and claws. I'm like, oh, baby, that is word for word your projection.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Your projection is what is the contents of your mind that is already prevalent before intuition hits. Which means I read a lot of murder mysteries. I see the world through murder mystery.
Right.
Which means that I read a lot of, Twilight novels.
Fantasy smut?
Exactly. I see the world through a fantasy smutty woman. Right. So that's how our projections work, because they utilize vocabulary. And this is why it's helpful to know the difference, which means that if you are a budding medium or even a skilled medium or a medium who's on TV, that doesn't mean that you're skilled. But if you're on TV, meaning that I watch, well, I'm going to bleep out their names, but there are two very well-known New York mediums. I won't say who they are because you can probably put it together, who are very skilled at what they do, but there is still projection in their intuition. Meaning, the difference is, well, your mother is here to give you a message, and they're spot on. And she's saying that because she's still stuck. I'm like, oh, baby, you missed it. You were so close to the finish line, and you missed it because you got the information in connection. But the moment you say, but she's stuck, is in connection to the vocabulary of that medium, which means it should always be academic. The more you learn, the more you change the academic response to your projections, which means the difference of me now versus me at 3 years old who saw everything very noir, the difference of me to see everything through light is my choice. It is my choice to express it through that way, and my choice to say, okay, I'll give you an example. I've gone into paranormal investigations with really, really skilled paranormal teams, and they'll say, we know that there was an unalignment here. And I said, you're right, there was an unalignment here. Well, it's documented because this person was so evil because of all this. There's all these things flying around the house. But for me, that's not what I see. What I see as a grandfather is here trying to have a conversation with this other individual. And when you say what the information is, they're like, whoa, how did you know that information? Well, it's because I made a choice to not see the lower frequency. I made a choice to take that frequency, transmute it way past an echo of their conscious energy to go into the highest elevated version of what spirit is. Many individuals call spirit echo. They think of an echo as spirit, but that's not spirit. That's just an echo. And if you don't know the difference, that right there is the difference between being a skilled practitioner who is academic, being a skilled practitioner who is working with a hunch or an instinct.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's really important. I know.
Sorry.
Because it's from the heart center, because you need to say that and we need to hear that, and I think that was really important for people to, again, be really grounded in themselves and expand how they view the world and how they view everything. So, thank you for that. But also tell everyone how they can work with you. What are you doing? And also, what was your Broadway life like? I don't know if we have time for that, but...
Well, I like to keep my acting career separate.
Ugh, boring. Bring it together.
I do that for a reason, because I don't want to feed anyone's projection, which is,
Fuck it. Who cares?
Yeah. But it does feed projection, because what happens is people say, oh, you're an actor, which must mean you must be acting.
Yes, and that is their shit that they are working through.
That's their projection.
And that's what they choose. And for you, you are multifaceted. You are more than one thing. And that's what I love about you.
Thank you. For years, I hid all that information, meaning that I would teach during the day from 7:30 until 4:30 inside of institutions. And then I would drive into Manhattan and perform. I had to be at my show. I was one of the runners. So I had to be at the show by 7 o'clock, and we'd go from 7 until 10:30. And then because I was the creative director of some of these shows, then I had to stay afterwards. And for years I did that, for years and years. But I did not let the Broadway, they knew that I could teach, but they didn't know that I was teaching 5 days a week in Long Island doing all this work.
Wow. And
I didn't necessarily tell all of my Long Island community of all these institutions that I was working with that I was performing in the city, because I didn't want at that time, and I changed my opinion now, but at that time, I didn't want anyone to feel like I wasn't fully invested into what that specific craft was. And unfortunately, that thinking that I had was a product of my own trauma. I was saying, I can't be the fullest version of me because the world only views me as this. If I have to be this, then I'll just be that. But that didn't work for me, So I was doing two different lives at the same time, and I felt very chaotic during those years.
How old were you?
I just retired 2 years ago.
I know, but I'm like, how? I can't even imagine that energy, to do that. I'm old. I'm like, oh.
I'm a go. I have no stop.
You have a lot.
How I've always been.
Okay, good.
But anyway, we don't have to talk about acting. In terms of how you can find me, I have a website called thelightseer.com. You can find me there. There is extensive information there based on my session availability. We release availability on Saturdays. I think we're currently, depending on when you listen to this podcast, but we're currently booking for the end of the spring season. I work with 4 clients a day, and then I'll add a 5th session in for people who want to join my Patreon. My Patreon is a subscription service. They get availability really whenever they want, and all that information is on the website. I also have monthly seminars you can join.
Awesome.
You can subscribe to those. So you can come see me twice a month in a monthly seminar. I also have modules that are released, but they're only released a few times a year, where you could do self-guided courses. I also have a small little tour schedule. All that information you can find on my website.
Love it. Thank you so much, bestie. I can't wait to come visit you in New York. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for tuning in again. If you are interested in booking a session with Kimo, all of his info is in the show notes. He truly is amazing. And lastly, if you are loving what you're hearing, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts so that we can continue to reach and help others. See you next time.